1. My wife, 30-year-old, and I, 30-year-old male, visited our alma mater for the first day of football this weekend. It's an SEC school, so it's a big deal and we love being close enough to visit whenever we want. We also have a friend, 30-year-old male, who is doing his residency in the same town as the school. Anyway, we watched the game at a bar instead of getting tickets. Everything was totally chill, until the three of us got a table on the rooftop area of the bar. There was a large group of students, about 15 guys and girls, sitting under the projector screen we were watching, and kept looking back at us as if we spit in their drinks because the three of us got the table and they didn't. Sorry, kids, you snooze, you lose. We weren't giving up our prime spot. After a while, a couple of the guys had too much to drink and started spitting and throwing up in the trash can right behind my wife. I'm talking if she leaned back in her chair, it would be touching this trash can. After a few minutes of the bouncers not doing anything, I turn around and ask if they can throw up literally anywhere else. A different trash can. The bathroom, or, just stop throwing up. Not a crazy request, or so I thought. Bear in mind that I went to school there, was in a fraternity, partied hard and had a good time, so I'm intimately familiar with the lifestyle. I also had respect for the people around me and asked the same of others. After some words were exchanged, things started to escalate, and this kid has the gall to say we, me and my wife and friend, should be thankful that he is throwing up in that trash can, because he could just vomit on the floor instead. At this point, we were pissed, and my buddy and I stand up to talk to him. I'm 5'10", and this kid is several inches shorter than me, so while he's not intimidating, I have a lot more to lose than he does. He also has this entire group of people that, for some reason, think he's in the right. We stand up, and the bouncers finally notice the commotion, and after some struggle that just makes it worse for him, unceremoniously pick up this kid around the waist and walk his ass out of the bar. About 5 minutes later, his buddy comes up and starts yelling at us that it's a college bar. What do you expect, and we're too old to be there, and whatever. The bouncers check him and he goes away. End of story, right? Ha! Nah. The rest of his group is giving us the stink eye, including the girl who has it out for my wife, who, at this point, my wife has not said a word, other than asking what's wrong with these kids. Well, the girl's nasty attitude and comments get the attention of the remaining bouncers. So, when they tell her to stop or leave, we watch this girl slap the bouncer and bolt for the stairs, but she doesn't make it far. So now this entire group of college kids, girls included, get into a little brawl with the bouncers, and they all get kicked out in a very public way. We just wanted to watch the football and enjoy the evening, but that was too much to ask of these kids. So that is how I got one guy who couldn't hold his liquor, and his entire group of friends kicked out of Sky Bar. Still a very fun weekend and a great win for the Tigers. War Eagle. 2. My eldest cousin is one of the most entitled people I know. I recently posted a comment on Reddit about how he's been brought up or given 5 vehicles over the course of the last 15 years. The most recent car is a nearly $20,000 SUV. I didn't think he could top that grift this year, but once again he outdid himself. My beloved grandmother died 10 years ago. My grandfather wanted to help make the mother of my cousin's children, who had been a part of the family for nearly a decade, an honest woman, and had my good aunt, not an entitled cousin's mother, fix up my grandmother's engagement ring so he could propose to her. Before that could happen, she came to her senses and left him. We all feared that entitled cousin would pawn the ring, as he has been known to gamble, accumulate debt without a plan to pay it off, and buy his cigarettes and weed no matter his income. So, neutral cousin held onto it for safekeeping. 5 years ago, my mother died. She had always wished for me to have my grandmother's ring, as my grandmother and I were close, and I am the eldest granddaughter. My entitled cousin wasn't dating anyone, his younger brother was not dating anyone, and neutral cousin and her sister have or are on track to have diamonds of their own. With their and good aunt's knowledge, I asked my grandfather if he would be okay with me taking the ring and making it mine so I could always look down and remember him, my grandmother, and my mother. As I do not have children, I mused that I would pass the ring to neutral cousin's daughter, who is named after my grandmother's mother, when I died, so it would remain in the family. My grandfather agreed, and I had the rather delicate ring resized, and it is one of my most prized possessions. I wear it all the time, and it makes me very happy to have this connection to my grandparents. In the last 3 years, entitled cousin began dating a woman. I have never met her, and my late grandmother certainly never met her either. They do not, and hopefully will not, have children together. He recently moved in with her, which is great for him, other than the fact that he's not there officially, and it's affordable housing she qualifies for as a single-income household. How very entitled of them. Entitled cousin began calling around when they started dating, and asked neutral cousin about the ring. She explained that I had it, she gave me a heads up, and I knew not to respond when I received one missed call from him a few days later. 2 years have passed without direct confrontation about the ring, or any contact at all for that matter, come to think of it. This morning, entitled cousin asked the good aunt about the ring, and she again reminded him I had it. I received a text from him, asking if I was around this weekend, as he wanted to catch up and grab the ring grandfather gave to him to give to his girlfriend. I told him I had asked our grandfather for it years ago, had it resized, and wear it every day to remind me of my late mother and grandmother. He replied that he was unaware it had been re-gifted and was happy I had it. I told him I was happy I had it too, and although I would much rather have an alive mother and grandmother, the ring brought me comfort. He made one more passive-aggressive comment, and that was hopefully the end of it from him, and we won't talk again for another 4 years, or until the next time he wants me to give him something. I may hear from his mother, enabling aunt, about this. I look forward to telling her to pound sand. Her son is not owed this ring because he was born first. His girlfriend never met my grandmother and has no connection with the family. It's not an estate piece worth thousands of dollars, it's the modest representation of the love my grandparents shared, and my entitled cousin can have it when he pries it off of my dead body. 3. My mother-in-law passed last Christmas Eve. Sadly, she had been battling cancer and was in remission. She took a fall and broke her pelvis. She had an internal bleed and the doctors didn't notice it, so that's how she passed. It was so sudden, and when we got the news, my husband and I were scrambling to find our way up there, because we lived across the country and our only vehicle was a super old pickup that shit itself just before this happened. Because of this, we weren't able to be a part of the funeral planning, but thankfully made it up there the day before with the help of his best friend. The viewing and the funeral were the same day, so as we walked into the funeral home, my husband noticed her ex-boss. We'll call him Greg, 'cause that's his name. I don't give a fuck if he hears this. Hi, Greg! You're a giant dick. Some info about her ex-boss. He was a giant piece of crap. She worked with him for the county and paid bills for different social service organizations, and was the go-between for CPS. This man was so useless, and she hated him with a passion. He would call her his work wife, much to her chagrin, and joke that he couldn't do anything without her. And he couldn't. She was doing both her and his job. She even built the database that the entire country uses to track all of the money spent on the various bills. Side note from my husband, yet she couldn't work the remote. Love you, Mom, but you couldn't. After she left, the secretary that replaced her ended up getting Greg fired because she quickly found out that he couldn't do his job because my mother-in-law had been doing it for him. She worked for him during the noughties when my husband was in high school. During this time, her husband, my father-in-law, was diagnosed with cancer. He battled it for years, but eventually he passed away from it in January 2011. The only reason my mother-in-law put up with this shit in the job was because she needed the health insurance for her husband's chemo since he couldn't work. Which Greg took full advantage of because he knew she couldn't afford to lose her job. During the times he fought and she had to take off work to care for him, her boss would send her home with work because he couldn't do any of it himself. Her husband was dying from cancer, and he was still sucking every last drop of work out of her he could. He was and still is a very scummy person. So fast forward to the funeral. She hadn't worked for him in like 6 years, and to see him there was just a slap to the face. Now, I'm not sure how funeral processions work in other countries, but in the States, there is a very specific order. First, obviously, is the hearse, and after that is the closest living relatives. Since my husband was an only child and his father had already passed, he was the closest living relative. Now, she did have 3 brothers, so they followed in the car behind ours, then her cousin, then everyone else. As we are all making our way to the cemetery, I see someone cut in front of her brothers. I turn around, and lo and behold, it's her ex-boss. I was pissed. He then tried to cut in front of us. Like, who does this? You are her ex-boss that she hated. My husband and her brothers were her family. And I thought it couldn't get worse, but it did. So, since we couldn't make it up there until the day before the funeral, we didn't have a say in the preacher who did her eulogy. He sucked. He stumbled on his words. He quarter-assed it. And obviously didn't know anything about her. It was so awkward, but after he spoke, before my husband gets a chance to stand up and speak about her, her ex-boss gets up. He starts talking about Maria and all the work that she did working for him, and how she did everything and she was his work wife. Ugh. And he talked at length about his work with the county and how they help the community, and just kept patting himself on the back. But the motherfucking icing on the cake was, he said that her work for him when my husband was a teenager directly inspired her to adopt my husband from Paraguay when he was a baby. Like, you're so self-absorbed that you think that what you do is so important that it inspired her to adopt 15 years earlier. I was squeezing my husband's hand so hard during all of this that I was about to break it. We didn't say anything out of respect for his mom. But this is what I say when I die. Please tell everyone I hate off. Let them know exactly how I felt, and even throw hands, I don't give a fuck. 4. Some needed background information. About 7 years ago, I had an accident while on a trip with my graduation class in Paris. Ever since, my left knee has never been the same, and it took over a year to find out the cartilage behind my kneecap is badly damaged. For years, I walked around regularly using one or both crutches, but ever since earlier this year, I finally got a proper cane, which I can walk way better with. Now on to the event. I was on my way home from an appointment at the hospital earlier today. Don't worry, I'm fine. It was just a follow-up on a surgery I've had. And since going to the hospital, plus walking all the way through the hospital and then back home, requires a lot more walking than my knee can handle on even a good day, I was using my cane. I have a simple black cane, though the top part I decorated with washi tape and stickers to give it a personal touch, and have it match my self-made stick-on nails too. Combined with having a dressing style that tends to stand out in the environment I live in, of course people notice me. Most people don't bat an eye though, except this older woman on the bus on my way home. Let's call her Plum, like the sour plum she is. So Plum sees me on the bus, sitting in a seat reserved for disabled people. I tend to sit there because it's close to the doors, but if someone with a stroller or in a wheelchair gets on, I will go sit in a regular seat for them. Plum seemed to not like me sitting there and loudly asked me what I was doing in the reserved seating. I didn't really answer vocally, just showed her my cane, which wasn't exactly hidden but right in front of me, after which the following conversation ensued. This is roughly translated from Dutch.
What does that cane have to do with you sitting in disabled seating? Bringing your grandmother her cane doesn't give you the right to use them.
This is my cane. I'm disabled. Please let me be.
No, I will not let you be, and I do not believe you are disabled. You look too young to need a cane. You probably stole it or bought it online, where you don't need to prove you need it.
My medical history isn't your business, but yes, I do need this cane, and no, I didn't steal it. It's mine, and
you young people always try to do just about anything to profit off our system. You probably use that stolen cane to fake your way out of work and into support money paid from my taxes.
Not that it has anything to do with you, but I'm actually doing everything I can to have a job, which I'm starting next week, because I hate being on support. Yes, afterwards I do admit that this was not the right thing to say, but I'm bad at confrontation, and while I try to stand up for myself more, I suck, and the moment sweeps my logical thinking away.
So you admit you are profiting from support payments and letting me and everyone else's tax money pay for your lazy fat ass? To pretend you're disabled? You should be arrested.
Now at this point, the bus driver had enough of the yelling, it seems, because he stopped at a bus stop that no one rang the signal for, but 2 bus security officers stepped on. These people aren't exactly police. They usually perform checks on people's tickets and will intervene with minor disputes that don't require the police. After some words with the driver, they came down to where I was sitting. One of them talked to me and the other to Plum. I explained what was going on, divulged the exact injury I have going on, and let them know I just want to get home, which was only 2 more stops from that point. My electronic bus card also got scanned, probably to confirm I was on the bus with a valid ticket. I don't know what Plum tried telling the security guys, but as soon as one pointed towards the security camera — all newer models for the past few years have those installed, keeping an eye on the doors, and the reserved seating is within view — she became quite rude towards the security guys, who then used their authority to make her get off the bus with them. Afterwards, I haven't been approached about filing complaints or anything like that, but considering they scanned my card, which includes my contact information for the public transport, I might receive communication about the situation later. Maybe not. While this is the one story about this I share, it's not the first time I've had people assume I was faking needing a cane, and probably won't be the last time. For some reason, people tend to assume a younger-looking person cannot need mobility aids, and it's infuriating at times. You might not be able to see the injury within my knee, but that doesn't mean it isn't there. The same goes for other disabilities that you cannot see. Please stop judging people according to your perceived versions of who is or isn't disabled. 5. So at the time this happened, I was in my late 20s and was working as a wireman and moonlighting as a mechanic. As a result of my 2 jobs and a few other factors, I have ended up with a keyring to put a janitor to shame. Apparently, this would come into play later on. Oh, and FYI, my username is UndeadAnything. That is on YouTube and TikTok. I post mechanic-related videos if you want to take a look. After a particularly long day, I had gone to Walmart to pick up a few things, and I had wandered back towards the electronics part of the store. Standing there with my earpads in, listening to music, and looking for a replacement phone case, this lady walked up halfway between being next to me and being behind me. I'm in my own little world comparing cases, and by a habit I picked up when I was a librarian's assistant, I was also putting random cases back where they belong, while trying to find what I needed. This lady has started rattling away about something that I couldn't hear, and after saying something to get my attention a couple of times, she tapped me on the shoulder. Turning around, I removed one pod so I could hear her, and she repeated herself, asking me where something was. I replied I had no idea, and went back to what I was doing. This apparently did not sit well with the resident Karen, and she stormed off to find the manager. Some 20 minutes later, I find my way to the camping section for some other item I needed. From the far end of the aisle, here comes Karen with a poor, befuddled manager in tow, pointing me out, squawking away about something I couldn't hear. As they approach, I see she is pointing at me, and the manager takes over, finally putting on his big boy pants. Again, I removed my pods to see what they have come to disturb me with. The manager asks me why I refused to help earlier. I replied that it's not my job to help someone find something they couldn't find on their own. Apparently this was the wrong reply, and he proceeds to chew me up one side and down the other. At this point, I have realized what is going on, and I halfway play along while trying to contain my fitful laughter. He tells me I need to turn my keys in and that I'm suspended until further notice. After a flippant and dismissive comment from me, the manager then proceeds to do his best impression of a cartoon character's volcanic explosion of anger, and lets loose. Apparently, I am fired effective immediately and can no longer apply to work for any Walmart ever again. I can no longer contain myself and start laughing hysterically while I tell him I don't work here. He then tells me that of course I don't, he just fired me. I then clarified and tell him I never worked for Walmart, ever, never even applied. At this stage, the local Karen has turned several shades of embarrassingly red, and the manager has joined her, his anger fleeing faster than a track star when he realizes his mistake. Still giggling uncontrollably, I grabbed my cart and strolled away, while she proceeded to dole out apologies for the entire affair. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Idiots in the Wild, episode 132. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please do poke the like button and share the video with family and friends. If you'd like to get the videos a little bit earlier, then you can support the channel through my Patreon, which is linked in the description and on the screen at this moment. You'll also find a link in the description to the Hellfreezer merchandise store, where you can treat yourself to some Hellfreezer merchandise. You can also make donations during streams and videos just like this one. While you don't have to do this, I do appreciate it and thank you. And before we go on, we have a little shout out to do. That goes to the author of the last story. That's the Fired from Walmart one, and that is Reddit user Undead Anything. Thank you very much, Undead Anything, for allowing us to use your story. Okay, no other business today, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is: what is something that is super popular, maybe a seasonal thing, that you've never tried, just never felt the inclination? For me, every year it comes up, is pumpkin spice season. Oh, we can get pumpkin spice lattes, pumpkin spice this and that. And I have no idea what the hype is. I've heard it's nice. I have just never felt the inclination to go out of my way to try it. I also can't really drink coffee anymore. I don't need to go into the reasons for that, I just can't drink it. Or too much caffeine, just a little bit now and again. And I mean a little bit, but we don't need to go into that. So I've never tried it. So what about you guys? Are there any that you feel the same about? It's not that you don't like it, you've just never had it. And you probably never will, because you're not going to go out of your way to find it. Let me know what you think in a comment below. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.